Hello sophomores, this is 5 things about those winter Sundays in 5 minutes. The poet Robert Hayden was also an essayist and an educator. He was the consultant on poetry to the Library of Congress in 1976, the first African American to hold that position. One of the important things to remember about poetry is that the poet who wrote the poem is not necessarily the same as the speaker who is telling you the poem. I know it seems confusing, but they aren't always necessarily the same. True, the poet will use a lot of their experience when they're writing that poem, but it's not necessarily them telling the poem to you. So when you're trying to come up with who's the speaker of the poem, you'll have to do the same thing you do in other pieces of writing. Look at what's there and make inferences. Look for details from the poem, like in line 13. What did I know? The speaker says. An adult, probably looking back at a childhood relationship with his or her father. Another important thing in poetry is descriptive language and figurative language. It's very important that poets use just the right descriptive language to paint that picture in our head. Like this piece, for instance, blue, black, cold. That brings with it a certain picture. Or how about this one? I'd wake and hear the cold splintering and breaking. Can cold really splinter and break? I think it can, and especially since this author is drawing our attention to the wood that's being splintered and broken in order to start a fire. The fire that this father is making for his family. But there's also something about the cold itself that seems to splinter and break the speaker of this poem. And not just the speaker, but also everything that he's feeling in relationship to his father. There's a lot of important details when it comes to looking at this relationship between the speaker and his or her father. One of these details we've already talked about. With the breaking of the firewood, the starting of the fire, it's clear that this father is interested in keeping his family warm. But there's more to it than that. After hearing these noises of the firewood splintering, the speaker says, "And slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house." So it's clear that although the fire will keep the family warm, there's also something there that isn't so warm in the relationship between these two people. Regarding the physical and emotional living conditions of the speaker and his or her father, we get these lines. With cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather made banked fires ablaze. We get the sense that this is a working class family or a family in poverty. So it's a struggle for this father to keep his family warm, to give his family the things that they need. Or how about these lines? Speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. So although the relationship between the speaker and his or her father is not perfect, we get a sense that looking back, now the speaker realizes all the things that the father did for them, even though their relationship might not have been the best or the warmest in the middle of this cold winter time. So that's all I have for you. I'll see you next week when we begin work on our extended writing project, the narrative.